Hello, today's lesson, I'm calling it lesson 2.0 because we're starting chapter 2 in Big Ideas Math, but the problem is they don't really go into simplifying fractions. So we need to make sure that we know how to do some work with fractions before we actually start trying to do math with fractions. So the warm-up is 2 simplifying problems and then in your own words what you think it means to simplify fractions. So go ahead and pause the video, spend about 5 minutes on this, and then unpause the video, and I'll show you what I did. So when I saw that there was 5/10, here's what I went with what I know, right? I know 5 is half of 10. And because 5 is half of 10, I know that this fraction is equivalent to 1/2. So I didn't actually do any simplifying, right? I just used what I know about the numerator being half of the denominator. Okay, for the second one, I could do the same thing. I know 100 is half of 200, but I thought, what if my students know how to do this? Both numbers end in 0, which means they're both divisible by 10. So I basically go in this direction, dividing 100 by 10 and 200 by 10, which gives me 10/20. But then these numbers end in 0, so they're both divisible by 10. And then I end up with 10 divided by 10 and 20 divided by 10. So that's how I get a simplified fraction of 1/2. So what does it mean to simplify fractions? Well, some people use the fancy math word of saying reduce to the smallest terms. But here's how I think of it. You want to make the fraction as simple as possible so that it is easier to understand, right? So what we're doing is the numerator and denominator, the top number and the bottom number, will have no common factors. So you guys know what common factors are, and you have the factor list that you can always refer to, but here's the idea. We're going to simplify the fraction so that it's easier to understand. Okay, so let's get to the lesson. So here's an idea that's not in your notes, but I just want to show you. If you have a fraction that says 8/16, the top number, right, this is the numerator, and this is what I say. So the numerator counts how many, right? And then the denominator, which is the bottom number, the denominator tells you the size, right? So right now, you can see, I mean, it really is a half of a pizza that's been highlighted, but the numerator counts how many. So right now I see 8 pieces and the size are 16ths, right? Super small pieces. Now, what if I do this? If I take this, just try to grab one. Oops, that's not the one I meant to take. Let's take that one off and put that one back. Okay, so now I still have half of a pizza, but guess what, right? The pieces are getting bigger. So now I have 4 pieces and they are cut into 8ths, right? So what I just did there was I took this 16ths and I was basically gluing, I'm dividing, but I'm gluing 2 pieces together at a time. So if I get my little highlighter here, I'm basically taking, let me just do it with pen. I'm taking these 2 pieces together, right? So now I have the piece sizes that are 1/8. So I took 2 16ths and I glued them together and I made one size pizza that's 1/8. So what I'm doing is I'm dividing by 2/2. Divide the numerator by 2 and the denominator by 2. And right as I keep going, you can see that I didn't do this right because my pieces got all messed up. I'm going to move that one. This one is divided into 4ths. And so now I have 4ths, that's my size, but I only have 2 pieces, right? They're getting larger. So it's weird that we're dividing the fraction, but the pieces are actually getting larger. And then of course the last piece that I'm left with is 1/2. I can't simplify any more than 1/2. So it totally makes sense that if you walk into somebody's house and you say, I have 1/2 of a pizza, I think they'll understand what you mean. Now, they might not understand what you mean if you say, I'm walking in with 8/16 8/16 of a pizza, right? It's a little bit harder to understand the 8/16. Super easy to understand the 1/2 of a pizza. That's the idea for today. Okay, so now I'm going to show you using the ladder method. You've already done this before, right? We try to divide out by prime numbers, 2, 3, 5, 7, 11. Always write those first 5 prime numbers. And now what I'm going to do, so this is the numerator, the top number, and this is the denominator. And so what I do is I put the numerator and the denominator at the top of my fraction ladder, and I label it N and D, and I just start dividing out by the prime numbers. Okay, they're even, divisible by 2. I get 30 and 40. They're even, divisible by 2 again. I get 15 and 20. Now 15 is not divisible by 2. They're not divisible by 3, but I see I can divide out by 5. So I get 3 and I get 4. So here's what you guys might remember, is that when I multiply the 2 times 5, right, 2 times 2 is 4, times 5 is 20. What I actually was figuring out was that there was a greatest common factor of 20. By the time I divide 20 out of each number, I end up with 3/4. But sometimes some people think it's easier to use the ladder because I don't have to think bigger picture of the greatest common factor. I just take steps at a time, factoring out prime numbers. All right, let's try that with 25 and 75. There's my numerator, there's my denominator. These are divisible by 5. I end up with 5 and 25. Divide by 5 again, and I get 1 and I get 5. So 25/75 is equivalent to 1/5. So isn't 1/5 easier to say and think about than 25/75? Okay, next is the OYO. So go ahead and pause the video, try these on your own, and then check your answer. Don't forget to start with dividing 2, 3, 5. You're going to write down the first prime numbers. Okay, go for it. Numerator, denominator. I'm going to divide by 2. I get 12, 18, get 6, 9, and now I'm going to divide by 3, and I get 2 and 3. So again, if I want to think about the greatest common factor, 2 times 2 is 4, times 3 is 12. So the greatest common factor is 12. After I've done dividing it out, 24/36 is equivalent to 2/3. Oops, box around that. Okay, I hope you're not just copying my work and that you're trying this yourself. If you copied the first one, pause the video, try this next. Oh, yo. Okay, I'm going to put the 100 and 200 in the ladder. Here's my numerator, there's my denominator. Divide by 2. 50 and 100. Divide by 2 again. I get 25 and 50. Divide by 5. I get 5 and 10. I'm going to divide by 5 again. Hey, wait a minute. We knew the answer to this one because we did it in the warm-up. 100 over 200 is equal to 1/2. And now you see I've done it another way. Okay, so now maybe you don't like the factor ladder method and you just want to go straight for the greatest common factor because it makes sense to you. You've got the factor pair list. You can find the greatest common factor. So look in the factor chart, find the factors of 8 and 20, and then hopefully you'll see that the greatest common factor that's in both lists is a 4. So here's what I do. First of all, I'm going to remind you that when I take 11 or any number and I divide it by 1, I get the original number that I started with, right? Basically saying I have $11. It's going to be split between, well, just me. I get to keep all $11, right? Anytime you take a number and divide it by 1, you have that same number. Now it's going to look a little bit different. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to divide by the greatest common factor, but we're going to put it over itself. We're dividing by a giant 1. Then what I think about is what I showed you before in the warm-up, where I literally divide the numerators, divide the denominators. So I'm basically gluing 4 pieces together at once. 8 divided by 4 equals 2, and 20 divided by 4 equals 5. So the equivalent simplified fraction is 2/5. Let's look at another one. If you walk into somebody's house with 48/64 of a pizza, they might not know what you mean. But if we look and see the greatest common factor is 16, I'm going to divide by a giant 1. That really is 16 over 16. I can use a multiplication chart. 48 divided by 16 is 3, and 64 divided by 16 is 4. So you really have 3/4 of a pizza. Okay, you've got 2 OYOs to do, and then I'm going to show you the homework. Okay, go ahead and pause the video. Try these on your own. Greatest common factor, 24 and 36 is 12. So I'm going to divide by 12 over 12. And I get 2/3. Okay, 15 and 35, those look like pretty big numbers, but the greatest common factor is 5. So I have to divide by a giant 1, which is 5 over 5. And I get 3/7. Okay, so now I want to show you what the, I hope that was fairly easy for you. I'm trying to build on our fraction skills as we move forward. Okay, so here's what the homework looks like. Notice that there's a bunch of fractions that you're going to simplify. So if I look at 6/9, what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide it by 3 over 3, the greatest common factor, and I get 2/3. So I'm going to put a B next to that one. I use the B. So what you're trying to do is in each of these, there's 3 problems. There's going to be 1 extra answer. And you're going to take that extra answer and put it in the box at the bottom of the page. Okay, so now let's look at 2/10. The greatest common factor is 2. So when I divide by 2 over 2, I get 1/5. There it is. L, I'm going to cross that one off. When I divide 20 and 35 by the greatest common factor of 5 over 5, I get 4 over 7. Okay, so there's my giant ones that I'm dividing out. And I end up with 4/7. Okay, so the letter that's left over is 2/7. So we're going to go to the backside page and we're going to fill in the letter E. It is for problem number 1, right? So the box that has 1 has an E with it. Okay, so here's what it looks like. Well, first, I do have a typo to show you. I'm going to go down here. Okay. So in box number 1, I'm going to put the letter E. So every time you get an answer, you're going to put the leftover, the one fraction that didn't match the 3 that we were doing, and you're going to put the letter that goes with it in the box that's next to the problem number. Okay, and now I need to go back and show you that there is a typo, right? So instead of okay, so it looks like this was fixed on your copy, so the 3 is correct. If you had a 9, that would be wrong. Okay, so good luck on the homework. Remember, you are in each of these lists. There are 3 fractions to simplify, and you will have 4 to choose from until there will be 1 left over. And that's the letter that goes in there, just like with number 1. I can show you right here that there were 3 fractions that we found that this matched B, so I crossed it off. This matched L, so I crossed it off. This matched V, which is 4/7, so I crossed it off. And number 1 is E. So that's what I put in the box down here. Okay, good luck on the homework.